Stop insulting everybody, John Brennan, who's butthurt that you got your security clearance taken away from President Trump in the summer of 2018.
I want to play a soundbite for you. The first is John Brennan talking a little bit about how bad it was that the Department of Justice suggested dropping the charges against Michael Flynn, and Mr. Clapper talking about how routine this unmasking thing is. What's the big deal? Here are both.
I think our country is in very serious trouble when you have such blatant political corruption at the highest levels of the U.S. government, something I never thought I would see in my lifetime.
It's a routine thing. It's appropriate and legitimate. When you have a valid foreign intelligence target engaging with a U.S. person.
He always sounds like he's...
Yeah. Well, you've got, again,
so
the Clapper, Clapper is testifying under oath. Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you a question first. A moment ago, before we played the soundbite, you said they were in the Oval Office cooking up the scheme. How do you know they cooked up a scheme in the Oval Office?
Because they came to Trump Tower the next day. And first of all, January 5th, 2017 ends up being a very important date. Jim Comey, the FBI director, who was in the midpoint of his 10-year term as FBI director and wanted to keep his job through the Trump administration, had not made his way to Trump Tower. I mean, Steve Harvey had been there. Shinzo Abe flew from Japan. I think Kanye West had popped by. Like, the whole world was coming to Trump Tower to see the president-elect, all the tech companies. And Jim Comey, the FBI director, didn't come for 2 months, but he came on January 6th as part of the intelligence briefing. And he was tasked to then afterwards sort of pull aside President-elect Trump and mention this ridiculous dossier. Let me remind everybody, dossier, Russian dossier, a fancy French word for a load of crap, and that's exactly what it ended up being. And yet, so you can see what's being mentioned about January 5th. The next day, they go to Trump Tower. I was just discussing this with Hope Hicks recently because we're two of the only people left here who were involved in those days' events. We had gone with the president to a different briefing all the way downtown in Manhattan, got back, he had the intelligence briefing, Comey pulls this nonsense, and then they all start talking to the media. Look at the timeline. Instead of helping us to have a peaceful transfer in the greatest democracy the world has ever known, they were doing this. And if they weren't, then I want to apply to them the whole standard, the same standard that was applied to all of us and President Trump during the Russia collusion nonsense. Guilty until proven innocent. Tell us you weren't cooking up the scheme. What do you have to hide? Stop insulting everybody, John Brennan, who's butthurt that you got your security clearance taken away from President Trump in the summer of 2018. And if you've got nothing to hide, then come forward and explain why Americans should not be concerned that this is what you were doing while you should have been helping us to have a peaceful transition. Look, it's one thing that they didn't want Donald Trump to become the president. It's quite another, drum roll please, that all these folks and many of their enablers in the mainstream media never expected Trump to win. They could not get over that shock. And remember, there have been other reports that people were declassifying intelligence all over town to try to pipe it out there before we got here. So I think people have a ton of questions. We went through 2 years of the Russia collusion, delusion, and it went to nothing. So can't we just have a minute, everybody, to find out what happened here? Let the Department of Justice and others do what they're doing. Let John Durham do his work. I've never met the man. We don't even discuss that here. But I'll be a curious citizen like everybody else to see what he uncovers.